Okay, it's we're live now, ladies and gentlemen. I think everybody's all in that are in. Thank you very much for attending council tonight once again on Zoom. This meeting is being recorded, as you know, as per usual. If everyone, as usual, could use the hand on the right-hand side of the screen and participants when you'd like to say something, then I'll come to call you. Apologies tonight. We have apologies from Angela.
Councillor Cruz.
Councillor Cruz. Okay, I think we'll now go through the roll call, please, everyone. And I think James is going to do the roll call. So alphabetical as usual. James.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Allison, please.
Here.
Councillor Archer.
Here.
Councillor Atkin.
Here.
Councillor Bright.
Here.
Councillor Buckler.
Here.
Councillor Bull.
Here.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Here.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Here.
Councillor Buttle.
Here.
Councillor Chapman.
Here.
Councillor Donnelly.
Here.
Councillor Elliott.
Here.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
Here.
Councillor Flitter.
Here.
Councillor Froggatt.
Here.
Councillor Finesse.
Here.
Councillor Gamble.
Here.
Councillor Hill.
Here.
Councillor Hobson.
Here.
Councillor Hughes.
Here.
Councillor Lees.
Here.
Councillor Tony Morley.
Here.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Here.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, here.
Councillor Purdy.
Here.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Here.
Councillor Rose.
Here.
Councillor Salt.
Here.
Councillor Shirley.
Here.
Councillor Slack.
Here.
Councillor Statham.
Here.
Councillor Sutton.
Here.
Councillor Swindell. Okay. Councillor Wayne.
Present.
Councillor Wakeman.
Here.
Thank you very much, James. Okay, so maybe Councillor Swindell will be appearing at some stage. Lovely. If we move on to item 2, public participation, you should have had an email this afternoon with the 3 items. The first one is regards item 9, and it's a statement from Mrs. Christina Porter. You can see it up there on the screen, please. And I hope you've all seen it on your email today. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to read it. As I say, this is item 9, the proposal of notice of motion that we'll be discussing shortly. And then I think because he's mentioned, I'll let Councillor Atkin respond. Councillor Atkin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, thank you for your statement. I'm sure the issues raised will be considered by members as part of the motion to be debated later on this agenda. I can't preempt the outcome of the debate, but it will be interesting to hear the views of members on the matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The second one is on item 16, and it's a question from Mr. Peter Dobbs regarding the Government Boundary Commission, the new electoral arrangements that we've been putting on our social media channels and has been out there on the web over the last few months, I think, really. And Peter Dobbs has a particular question about Ashbourne. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dobbs, for your question. The councillors have received a request from Ashbourne Town Council to review the data supplied to LGBCE. This review is underway and officers will respond to the Town Council in due course. However, as these proposals come from LGBCE, any concerns held by an elector or interested party should be directed to the Boundary Commission as part of their consultation before, I think it's 12th of April. I've got a graphic over the date, Chair.
Thank you. That's correct. And then finally, the third item is regarding item 17, the Peaks and Dales Railway. And it's a statement from Nigel Lee, a Derbyshire Dales resident. And again, once again, I'll ask Councillor Purdy to respond.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for the response to come up. I think there's some more pages yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tully, for your statement. Officers have asked both Derbyshire County Council and the Peak District National Park Authority if they are willing for their letters on this matter to be made public. Should they allow it, we will place them on the District Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That concludes item 2. Item 3 is interests. I've got Councillor Chapman first.
Yeah, personal interest in item 9, Chair, and I shall withdraw from the meeting for that
Thank you
item.
very much. I've got nobody else mentioned any interest. Okay, lovely, thank you. Item 4 is the approval of the minutes of previous meetings. I so move. Councillor Shirley.
Sorry, second.
Thank you very much. I think this can be a show of hands, please, everyone on the screen, if you're in agreement. Anyone against? Thank you. So that's passed. Item 5 is leaders' announcements. Councillor Purdy, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank Paul and the CLT team and officers for the organisational update recently circulated. I know you've all read it, but for the benefit of the public, once again, it reveals the extensive amount of work that is being carried out by staff in this authority and during very difficult times. Unfortunately, there are some jobs that are having to be put to one side because of the pressures of the pandemic. But overall, I think the officers and staff are doing an extremely good job. Whilst we might be celebrating the success of the government vaccination programme, the recent outbreak of the COVID infection at Sudbury Prison reminds us not to be complacent and to always be on our guard. Unfortunately, a number of staff in our Clean and Green team have reported symptoms of the virus. And of course, this has a knock-on effect and no doubt, I'm sorry, some of you have suffered some lack of bin collections, and that's the reason why. So there are very challenging times ahead for us still. Life is not yet back to normal. Plans are in place to help follow the government guidelines on the gradual reopening of businesses in the next few weeks. I also want to re-emphasise a message circulated by our communications manager, Jim Fern, with regard to the scam recently discovered in Wirksworth. People should be aware that our revenue team have received calls from council taxpayers in the Wirksworth area about phone calls and emails claiming to advise of a council tax refund. This is a scam, so please be aware. It's already been commented on, but I can't help repeat the excellent and quick-footed work by our community development team, which resulted in a £110,000 award that DDC will pass on to Freedom Leisure. So well done to the team involved. The Chief Executive and CLT are closely examining the recent announcement on further grant funding from government under the Levelling Up scheme. Please be assured that we're looking very closely at what can be achieved in the timescale, which is very tight, and according to the prospectus, which has to be rigidly followed. At lunchtime on Tuesday, 2nd of March, I had the pleasure of meeting up with Rob Coggins, Councillor Steve Flitter, and Father Brian Smith, acting on behalf of Matlock Town Council, at the historic almshouses on Causeway Lane, Matlock. Derbyshire Dales District Council has invested £250,000 grant funding into an innovative project to upgrade the almshouses. It was really pleasing to see the fantastic change to these properties, not only with modern appliances, but with superb green energy improvements, including 32 solar panels, insulated floors, and triple glazed windows. The properties were built in 1895, so one can imagine the amount of work required to bring the properties up to modern living standards. One only had to look at the beaming smile of Father Brian Smith to see what it meant to help keep the memory of Margaret Harrison's gift to the community alive. So well done to Rob Coggins and his team, and I know that he already has his sights on upgrading other almshouses in our area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And for the record, Councillor Raw has given her apologies and Councillor Swindell has joined the meeting. Moving on to item 6, Chairman's announcements. Councillor Froggatt.
None, Chairman. There's been nothing happening due to the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 7 is to receive the non-exempt minutes of the committee shown below as listed. I so move. Councillor Shirley.
I second.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show of hands on that, the minutes. I think that's unanimous. Anyone against? No. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. And then so we can now move on. The minute that will follow, that has followed. Item 8 is questions, rule of procedure 15, and we've got 3 questions, and we'll take to question 1, and we'll take that as read from Councillor Gamble, and thank you, Councillor Gamble. We'll ask Councillor Purdy to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. The assessment of such complaints is delegated to the monitoring officer or his deputies in consultation with one of the council's independent persons. The deputy monitoring officer, following consultation with the independent person, decided that there was insufficient evidence to suggest a direct breach of the code had taken place in respect of the complaint to which you refer, and no further action should be taken as a result of the allegations.
Okay, Councillor Gamble, you have a supplementary if needed.
Sorry, no, that's answered the question. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then the second question is again from Councillor Gamble. Councillor Purdy.
Again, thank you for your question. As you know, every planning application must be determined according to its merits, and various planning notices and representations received from statutory consultees. Members of any political group or none, when considered a planning application as a member of the planning committee, should not participate if they have predetermined the matter. I am not aware of any member having stated that they have predetermined this matter, although I am aware of a number of members across the authority whose views on this application are well known and would likely be considered by a reasonable observer to be biased in respect to this matter.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Gamble, do you have a supplementary to that one?
Really? So I just wondered, would you care to name any of the members you believe have a view, or?
Councillor
No,
Purdy.
I prefer to that in writing, Councillor Gamble.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then the third question, again, should come up on the screen now. Jim, please. Oh, well, it was on the screen because they were all 3 lumped together, weren't they? And it's to do with International Women's Day. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you for the question. The focus of the council's leadership has been on responding to the pandemic, but I think in future years we could do more to join the global celebrations of the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. I no need to remind you, Councillor Gamble, that recently the Chief Exec has put reports to full council, which has shown quite clearly the pressure that our staff are under. The facts that we should not ignore are that the Deputy Leader of the Council and the Chair of the Governance and Resources Committee, which are both key political officers within this council, are held by women. The council's previous Chief Executive was also a woman, and the previous Monitoring Officer was a woman. The council also publishes equality information, which shows a gender pay gap of £234.83 in favour of female staff. These facts demonstrate that the District Council is an organisation which is not ambivalent on gender equality.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble, you have the right to supplementary.
So are you saying for that you don't think there's any work this authority needs to undertake in terms of the place of women when we do have a nearly all corporate leadership team that's men, and you know, all the decision making, particularly when it takes place in terms of the leadership group, that is an entirely male group, isn't it?
Councillor Purdy.
I repeat, we have been extremely busy this year, and we will look to it in the new year when we get rid of the pandemic. And I've highlighted the fact that this authority is not ambivalent on gender equality.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on then to item 9, which is the proposal of the notice of motion, rule of procedure 16. And I'd like Councillor Atkin to introduce his motion, please. Councillor Atkin, at this stage, I should say, all officers' machines will be turned off. So those of you who are watching at home, the officers of the organisation will be not participating in this debate, of course. Councillor Atkin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Well, what can I say? Who'd have thought that in the last 15 months we've had 2 major flooding events and the COVID-19 pandemic, which are still dominating all our lives in some shape or form in varying degrees. I would like to publicly put on record my thanks to all our staff for their dedication they have shown to this authority, given the exceptional circumstances we've all had and still face today going forward. Our staff remained steadfast. They have gone up and beyond what is expected of them, given their contractual arrangements with this authority, showing exceptional commitment in their efforts for the benefit of our residents. Derbyshire Dales was praised for its handling of grants in the first tranche of monies from government by MCLG for the speed and efficiency of processing £23 million in grants, which were paid in under 2 to 4 weeks, if my recollection is correct. And still our officers and staff are still showing this resilience in testing times, and it should be acknowledged. To this end, I propose a motion that this council recognise the commitment shown by all staff at this authority, and that a one-off payment is made to every employee of the authority, irrespective of position or pay scale, by way of recognition of their hard work and commitment. The payment suggested being £150 and is to be paid at the next cycle of salary payments. This payment will be met out of the COVID-19 additional burdens money we have received from central government and will not impact on the financial burden to this authority. I so move. And can we have a recorded vote, please, Chair?
Of course, thank you. And does that find a seconder with Councillor Finesse?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to second this motion. I believe it's right to reward officers for the extra work they've been asked to do because of the pandemic and the flooding. And I believe that the £150 is the appropriate amount of compensation.
Okay, thank you very much. Could we go to the full screen, please, Jim, so I can see. Councillor Burford, Sue Burford, thank you.
Thank you. Are we on questions, Chair?
Well, it's a debate, it's a motion, so you can carry on. It's a debate.
So,
it's a debate.
I don't think there's one single member of this council who wouldn't want to put on record our thanks to all our staff. But the question is, what alternatives have been considered for this government grant? What other alternatives have been considered?
Okay, well, I think that can be swallowed up in the debate because it is a debate and the officers are not taking part, as you know. And Councillor Atkin can have his say at the end. Councillor Mike Ratcliffe, please.
I hear you.
Right, thank you, Chair. I'm going to leave it to others in the debate to comment on the specifics of the funding and the use of monies that we've received from the government. I'm sure someone will wish to reply to the resident that sent in the comment, but I want to give my perspective, if you'll allow me. When the story of the years 2020-21 in Derbyshire Dales finally comes to be written, history will show us that those who helped us emerge from those bleak times of flooding and the COVID virus impact, as much as any, will be those selfless public sector workers and local authority employees. This has been commented any number of times. That they deserve our thanks should be a given, but recognition of the extra mile or additional hour of unremunerated service sometimes is a much more concrete and welcome way of truly marking our thanks. The District Council, of course, is not responsible for other organisations. That's up to them to decide, but it can mark its own gratitude for what has been done in this very tangible way. This small payment is a way of expressing gratitude to each and every member of this authority for their efforts during this time of emergency. There will be, no doubt, those for whom this is a public relations matter, given the desperate plight that still exists for many low-paid workers and their families and others who are still experiencing, because of furlough payments, inevitable increasing costs and tax rises. The vote this evening, I have absolutely no doubt, will not be unanimous. And ultimately, it will probably come down to individual conscience as much as where the money is coming from. But as long as the evidence that I have read and have seen discussed of the legal, financial and equality positions are sound, and that no service budgets are being impacted upon, or the delivery towards COVID of this authority, I am willing to give my support to this small payment.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes. Hugh,
Thank you,
unmuted.
Chair. Sorry, I had
Yeah.
to unmute.
Okay.
I would like to echo some of the comments that Councillor Radcliffe made, but I draw a slightly different conclusion, I'm afraid. The motion raises some very difficult issues. I, of course, wish to acknowledge the significant extra effort and stress on council employees over the course of the pandemic, effort and stress that will continue, I expect, for much of the current year. Nevertheless, I find it a difficult motion to support, and I do so for the following reasons. First, the appearance of making payments in this way without due process when others are facing hardship. There are many other public sector workers who have been badly affected by the pandemic, having to work longer hours in more onerous conditions and with additional stress. And we know, Councillor Purdy mentioned the Sudbury Prison office, the prison officers there have an extremely hard, arduous job at the moment. And then there are our own refuse collectors who have, I understand on one occasion, half of the staff were off sick with COVID or were otherwise self-isolating. So there have been real problems for a number of local authority public sector workers who will not be covered by this. And then there are many private sector workers who, due to timing issues alone, have not benefited from any of the government schemes and have been left to seek alternative employment and have been left on unemployment benefit. And there are the shopkeepers and cafe owners and restaurateurs and pub owners that have to continue to pay rent on property that isn't bringing in an income. Now, you may say they have been compensated, but they haven't been completely compensated. The rent is considerably greater, I believe, than the compensation that they will receive in many cases. And these public and private sector workers and businesses are, of course, present in Derbyshire Dales and therefore ratepayers. Then there is the purpose in which the government aid has been provided. My belief is that the funding was intended to cover loss of income and additional expenses incurred because of the pandemic. Due process should be followed in determining such loss of income and additional expenses. Some council workers receive overtime or time off in lieu. They should have been compensated for additional hours worked. Then last week, at the Governance and Resources Committee meeting, it was agreed to provide compensation to grade 8s and above who do not so benefit. This payment is being made on an honours basis. Committee members were pleased to pass this motion. Therefore, some compensation has been or will be made available to those who have been directly impacted in terms of their working hours by the pandemic. And then there is a suggestion by government that parish councils should be consulted about how this money should be allocated. Matlock Town Council was not consulted, yet it has lost tens of thousands of pounds in income due to the closure of the Imperial Rooms. I expect Wirksworth has lost similar amounts of money from the closure of its excellent town hall. And parish councils such as Tansley, I expect, have lost money because they cannot rent out their buildings. Has Derbyshire Dales asked them whether they need compensation? I would like now to close with a quote from one of the residents in the Matlock St Giles ward. Quote, "We are told the money will not come directly out of council funds, but out of government grants, basically public money. I believe the government have given these grants to local authorities to respond to local pressures and priorities. While the grants are not ring-fenced, the government has an expectation the additional money will be to support the local area. Our country has depended heavily on health workers, teachers, refuse collectors, supermarket deliveries, and all of these people have been invaluable. Is a one-off thank you payment with compliments from the government being given to them? That person copied several other people who voiced their agreement. One mentioned the prison officers who I mentioned earlier. Voting for this motion, I would find it difficult to face residents in my ward. Therefore, I'm sorry, but I voted in favour in the Government and Resources meeting, but I cannot vote for this motion due to the lack of due process, difficulty in squaring payment with government reasons, and because of fairness with other public and private sector workers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. I, like others, are really, very thankful for the hard work and, the extra mile that the Derbyshire Dales employees have shown and put in over the last nearly a year now of the pandemic. But I decided that I would consult with my residents on this and see how they thought I should vote. I set up a poll on our local village social media sites, and the results of which were overwhelmingly not to vote for this. 83% of residents said they didn't agree with this payment. So on that basis, I will be voting against this motion and supporting my local residents' views. Thank you.
Councillor Wakeman.
Yeah, so also I've took some views on this with some local residents, and it's come back unanimous that we will support it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chairman. I take from Councillor Hughes' point that many people who've been involved in this COVID situation, frontline workers, etc., haven't been paid any bonus. But that's not to say that we shouldn't show our appreciation to our workers. We've been at every meeting. I've been one of them. We've praised our workers for floods, going out in COVID situations, going above the call of duty, really. And really, that's words. This is it's not a big payment. Many employers pay more of this in your Christmas bonus at Christmas for many workers. So it's only £150 a one-off payment. And if we can't do that, I think we're letting them down. Yeah, there'll be people who say it could have been spent on this, could have been spent on that, but we've got to value these people. They've done well for us. And one of my disappointments is that the people that work for Serco, they should be working for the council. They should be taken in house. All this should have been brought into house as we should have it. It shouldn't be like this. We own the refuse vehicles. These people should be working for us, and they get a much better deal, and they're getting from Serco. Serco putting the money in their pocket, not in the workers' pocket. So I think public sector workers are undervalued, really, and I will support this motion because it's not a big amount of money. If it had been more money, it would have been a different situation. But really, many other councils and companies should watch what we are doing and do the same for their people what's been on the front line. So
Okay,
I will support this.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Councillor Archer.
Thank you, Chair. Really difficult issue, this. I want to start, as everyone has done, by just saying that, despite what I'm going to say in terms of not supporting this motion, I couldn't be give more praise to the working officers and employees. I think they have done a fantastic job throughout this crisis. I'm not going to go over the arguments that Councillor Hughes put, other than to say I completely agree with those. I'm also in agreement with the member of the public who made a contribution at the start of the meeting, and with Councillor Allison. So I'm not going to go over those same points, but I would just like to add my voice to those points, and also add to that I am a public sector worker myself. I work as a teacher in a large secondary school. If someone was to say to me, have you been hard done by this? Well, yeah, I've had to work a lot of extra hours. I've had to adapt a lot. If someone said, do you think you want a bonus payment? 100% not. I've had a stable job. I've been continued to be paid. I've not been affected anywhere near as badly as many people. And I think to use public money to give a bonus to public sector workers at a time when the government are claiming that public money is so short they can't even afford to pay nurses more than a 1% pay rise, is just not the right thing to do at this time. I completely understand the feelings and the desire to try and give workers in the council a bit extra, and I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I think they do deserve it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is the right thing to do at this particular time. And although I could say from my personal experience as a public worker myself, public sector worker, I do get a good wage. So, but equally, I know other teaching assistants, admin workers, dinner ladies, cleaning staff, who've all had to work incredibly hard in the school I work in. And again, the concept of spending public sector money at this time to support that, I just don't think is right when we're so short of money. One week in a meeting, we're debating how short of money are in the budget and how tight things are. And the next thing we're talking about using money that's been allocated for spending on COVID crisis and supporting local communities on giving our own employees a pay rise. As I say, I don't claim it at all. They don't deserve it. I'm not saying that. I just don't think it's the right thing to do at this time. And therefore, I just don't feel I can support it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Salt.
Thank you, Chair. I do support the motion. I can't really get behind what Councillor Hughes says in terms of due process. This is a notice of motion. Notice of motion has been tabled. It's permissible to do it, and it's a question of whether this council thinks we should do it or we shouldn't do it. And if enough of you think that we shouldn't, then we won't. As for the funds and where else they could be used, there's nothing to stop any council tabling a notice of motion for the use of those funds, provided it's permissible in what they've been put down for and put forward for them. There's not to stop anybody doing any of what they want. The alternatives, of course, are we do nothing. And it's not just COVID we're talking about the extreme efforts that council officers have gone to throughout 2 flood events. It is a small amount of money. I suppose it's a fair amount of money if you put it all together. But we have the opportunity to thank them financially. It's not much, but it's a little bit of something. Yes, it's public funds. Yes, it's given by the government for, as Councillor Hughes said, for expenses incurred. Well, I think I'm quite happy that this is just that, and this is something that should be paid to those who've gone above and beyond. I completely and wholeheartedly accept what he says about other public sector workers. And whether they deserve more money, and they deserve money for the extra efforts they've put in, and even private sector workers, and I bang the drum for people who work in the local corner shop and have kept things going and kept people going in communities. But we don't have the power to make a difference there. We have the power to make a difference here, and I think the small payment will make a difference, and perhaps to some people make them think that we appreciate them and that it's all been worthwhile. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Tony Morley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to address a matter of cause and effect here. This is the second half of a council meeting which began last week, is it not? To the best of my recollection, we have not yet managed to get through an agenda in one meeting. That generates another meeting. The officers are here again, and the majority of them cannot claim, or can claim time in lieu, but they can't take it because they don't have time. So I think perhaps we look at ourselves and our ability to get through an agenda on time as possibly a part of the cause. So I will be supporting the meeting, the motion.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I too have taken views of residents, and I have to say there are more residents in my part of the world who didn't support this than do. But notwithstanding that, I will be supporting the proposal. I think there are drawbacks to it, which others have mentioned. I would hope that the Chief Executive, before any payment is made, does exercise due diligence and ensures that this funding can be used for this purpose. I would have preferred if Councillor Atkin had included our refuse workers, or the refuse workers, notwithstanding the fact they're employed by an external organisation, but they work on our behalf, so I would have preferred if they had been included. And I think this stands in stark contrast to the attitude shown by the government in recognising the nurses and national health staff seem only to be worth 1%. So I do think this is something which I would all of us to support, notwithstanding the fact that we'll acknowledge there are a number of shortcomings with it. I would say that, as has been remarked, Council has agreed to support staff who've worked extra over hours. I hope again the Chief Executive will use some discretion to ensure that we don't end up rewarding some staff twice over.
Thank you very much. Can I just point out, members, that I have 21 people on my list to debate this, which is fair enough. It's the motions, but I ask you to be pertinent with your comments, please, and preferably as brief as possible. We've got a long agenda. I've now got Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. When I first saw it, I was somewhat surprised because I think this came to the fore before Christmas and it was proffered up then. And at the time I spoke to the Chief Executive about this, and I would have liked to have seen some more differentiation. Councillor Atkins' proposal of £150 doesn't differentiate between somebody who works 5 days a week or 1 day a week. So I did, whilst I was delivering the prescriptions this week around various parts of Matlock, I've asked people what their views were, and the vast majority were not supportive of the proposal. I do feel that, and so I also phoned the finance officer, and at the time I spoke to them, there was £95,000 in the fund. There's £30,000 gone from last week's motion from the governance and resourcing, and the calculation was that there'd be about £15,000 left after this, if this was to be approved, taking account that maybe 300 people within the organisation. I know it's less than that, but and the officer, the finance officer, said that the money at the end of March would go back into the funds of the council. So yes, it does impact on the council's funding. I'm going to listen to the rest of the debate, but I would like to say that I'm disappointed that there isn't any differentiation. And I personally have been working like Councillor Archer and many other people and done our jobs without any further money. And I would not expect any further remuneration, but I do fully support all the workers within this council. They've done an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Councillor Purdy is next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. This motion is about a gesture. It's whether we support our staff, and words mean nothing unless you make a gesture, and the gesture is a small amount. You've all heard from the Chief Executive on the amount of problems he's had with toil, officers not being able to take leave and so forth. And so, as far as I'm concerned, this is a problem that's national. Every time I go on the DCN meetings, I hear the same cries from leaders about the hard work of the public sector workers, and I do think that they are overlooked, and the least we can do as an authority and as members is not overlook them. And there's also a limit to relying on goodwill, Chairman. I think that, you know, you can bleed the bath out of whatever the saying is, but I think you take my point. There is a limit to goodwill, and I'm sure that the staff would very much appreciate this. I know what the public think and say, and I respect that. But as leaders, as community champions, I think we should show some support for our staff who have worked more than a year without any time off and without any leave. And I find it sad that some members can't support it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Swindell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to support it, and in saying that, it's not that I don't appreciate and I haven't listened to the concerns of those who aren't supporting it. But I am doing. £150 isn't a life-changing amount that we're talking about here. But to those on the bottom of the pay scale at our council, this is you know, a really nice gesture. It can sort of give them a little bit of a boost, if you like, for the work that they've done. For those at the top, I'm sure they can refuse it and put it back if they like, if they don't feel that they do deserve it, and so on. But just to say that last month we were talking about making sure that staff were paid for in lieu time and overtime that they've done. I guarantee you they're not going to get all of that back, not at the fault of the council. I'm sure some of them will not be claiming for hours that they've worked. I work as a postman, a bit like Councillor Wayne. We've had a massive surge in the work we've had to do. No major pay increase. We've had a very small one. We got a bonus. But because of that bonus, you work that bit harder. We do go above and beyond. We do extra and don't put it down for the overtime and the hours. And that is what we've done through this pandemic. And let's just remember, staff were out at Darley Bridge in my ward overnight, through days over the weekend, helping with those flood defences. We've had staff who are on the phone getting grief and abuse because their bins haven't been collected. We've got staff working from home. They've had additional costs, probably trying to homeschool alongside that. They have had so much more work throughout the last year on top of everything they've done, and probably also covering for colleagues who have been isolating and maybe even been unwell themselves through the work that they've done. £150, it's not a lot, but to give it, as Councillor Purdy says, as that gesture, just to say thank you for everything that you've done. Because believe me, in my job, it's getting very tiring. It's not easing up despite the vaccinations and so on. And I can imagine our staff are also feeling at their wits' end. And if they're listening to this debate, I should imagine they're feeling quite unappreciated by some of the comments that are being made, although I understand the arguments being made. But let's just, for this one opportunity, just give them a little pat on the back and say, here you are, have a drink on us.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too shall be brief, but also I'd just like to say life now isn't all about money. And I'm saddened and astonished that this has taken so long to listen to, with respect, colleagues' comments referring to national issues. We are talking about our local people. We as a council are talking about people who we should care about. And just to say thank you. It's as simple as that. And I should be fully supporting the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Chair. I've also listened to all the colleagues, both for and against this. I agree with some of the members that we have to be mindful of the people in the public sector who have gone above and beyond the call of duty over the current pandemic, the situations. But I have to agree with my other colleagues that, you know, I don't think filling sandbags in flood situations at 3, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning was in any of our staff's job descriptions, and yet they did it. So yeah, it is £150. It is a lot of money, and it's taxpayers' money. But I feel comfortable that we as councillors should be able to say thank you to our staff. We don't have any say over whether nurses get a pay rise. I do part-time care work in an adult care home. I think care workers should get pay rises. We have no control over that, but we do have the ability to say thank you to our staff with a small token of goodwill. So I will be supporting it.
Councillor Gamble.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, listen with interest for what everybody's slipped had to say. And although, I mean, the thing I regret, I think I do wish some people wouldn't turn this into you're either for the workers and you'll give them £150 or you're against them. I don't think that's the case at all. I think you're fully able to fully appreciate someone and pass your thanks on to someone, for someone to realise, you know, just what a good job, you know, our officers have done, without necessarily then having to then also give the message to people, to local people. And I take the point about this is about local people, but I'm, you know, thinking about the local people who've had it really tough. You know, the private industries, the businesses that have been shut for nearly a year, they're still facing rent. You know, like someone mentioned, the pubs where, you know, the breweries aren't being as generous now with beer that gets wasted and things like that. Some of those have been some people had a real shock to the system, if I can put it personally. For Monday night to be told that your business, the thing that puts a roof over your head, is going to shut overnight, and you spend the next day cancelling jobs, and then for 3 months you get coronavirus job retention scheme on a fraction of what you actually normally earn, with only your savings that you've put aside to save you. That's a difficult situation. And it's not that I don't appreciate workers at all, but I think it's very difficult to really justify this when I think some people, and might take the view that, and I don't mean this in any sort of horrible way, but these people, our employees, yes, they've gone through a lot. Yes, they've gone over and board, but they still have a job. And there are people who will think that. And I think for that reason, I am reluctant to say no, but I think I will listen to the rest of what everybody says. But at the moment, I would justifying it.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll be very brief. I mean, this is something within our control we can do. It's a small gesture of thanks to our dedicated staff. £150 is neither here nor there. And I fully support this motion by Councillor Atkin. I'm 100% behind it. So I'm all for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Battle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the government has given £6,500 per household out in the last year as general support. So I don't think our 150 quid is going to make a massive big hole in the government's finances. And I do think it's quite good to support the chief exec and his choices to support his staff and to thank them. And so it is a gesture. 150 quid is 150 quid. I'm always very happy with 150 quid, and I hope they will be too. I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson.
I'll be brief, Chair. I will be supporting the motion. We're a small team, a hard-working council, and they deserve it.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Councillor, that's everybody who wishes to speak. I'm now going to ask Councillor Atkin to wrap it up, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much, members. I've been listening with interest to the debate, but it has to be recognised. We do need to recognise our workforce, and has been said, this is a very, very small gesture in some way to show our support of our staff. So I'll leave it at that. So I just hope you can support the motion, members. Thank you very much, Chair.
I'll now ask James to do the recorded vote, please. Okay, so alphabetical as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Beginning with Councillor Allison.
Against.
Councillor Archer.
Against.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
Aye.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Against.
Councillor Sue Burford.
Against.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
Against.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
Sorry, against.
And I could have a dinosaur on it.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
Against.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
I believe Councillor Rose wasn't present all the way through the debate, so I'll go to Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
Against.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Thank you very much for your motion, Councillor Atkin. Okay, moving on to the items that were deferred from last time. We've got item 10, the medium-term financial strategy. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks Council's approval for the medium-term financial strategy for the years 2021-22 up to 2025-26. The strategy is intended to set out the Council's strategic approach to its finances over the coming 5 years, and it provides a framework to be used for future service provision and setting council tax levels. The proposed medium-term financial strategy is shown at Appendix 1 to the report. Paragraph 2.1 of the report sets out the uncertainties that currently exist around the council's finances, which members are probably very familiar with. I mentioned them 2 weeks ago at the budget setting meeting. And the most significant areas of uncertainty relate to, firstly, the potential for further significant reductions in government grant following the government's reviews of needs and resources in the Fair Funding Review. That's currently underway. And also the impact of proposed changes to business rates and the amount of business rates that the council might be entitled to receive in the future. As mentioned in the budget report 2 weeks ago, the updated medium-term financial plan indicates that there is a need to identify savings or additional income to close a budget gap that's forecast to be around £318,000 in 22-23, rising to almost £600,000 in 2024-25. While these are significant amounts, my advice is that if members agree, we should defer any immediate savings plans until we know more about the outcome of the fair funding and business rates reviews. We do have money in reserves that we could use in the short term to balance the immediate year's budget, the 2022 budget gap if we don't, if the financial settlement isn't favourable. There are risks with this approach, and they're set out in Part 5 of the medium-term financial strategy. That explains that the risks will be mitigated by robust budget monitoring, together with using reserves in the short term, as I've just mentioned. As well as having to make savings in order to balance its revenue budget over the coming years, the council's sources of finance for capital funding are becoming depleted, and that's covered in the capital strategy, also on the agenda for this meeting. It's clear that the council's financial resilience has been weakened by the use of reserves to offset cost pressures and lost income due to the coronavirus pandemic, as well as to fund capital programme. We've had to use £750,000 of balances in 2021 to meet the shortfall caused by COVID. So to address this, it's recommended that any underspending in 2021 or subsequent years should first of all be used to top up the general reserve back to its previous balance. And any residual balance after that should be transferred to strategic reserves to finance the capital programme, fund investor save initiatives that pay for themselves in the long term, or to mitigate against future funding pressures. I ask members to approve the report recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Statham.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Karen, for the report. I'd like to move the recommendations as they are written in the report. So thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sutton.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much again to Karen for this, and I'm more than happy to second this.
Okay, Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, perhaps in a rhetorical vein, and maybe not to be answered solely by Karen, but I'd be obliged for a reply or a comment. A couple of years or so ago, this council suspended its involvement in a commercial board operation. Is it time now to reopen and take a more positive, creative approach and restore perhaps a dialogue with the public-private sector partnership that we were involved with at that time? I'm referring particularly in your report, Karen, to paragraphs 1.11 and 1.12, so you'll understand where this is originated from. And I have another question in a moment.
Okay, Karen.
Sorry, just having trouble unmuting there. The commercial board was withdrawn because, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it didn't take many decisions. So that was the first decision, not first reason. But more importantly, I think, when the commercial board was set up, we did have an investment fund that had over £800,000 in it. That office is intended to be sort of seed money for any investments schemes. But since that date, that investment fund has been approved by members to be used for the Bakewell Road development in Matlock. So that's why I think if you were to look at again at the commercial board now, you'd need to review totally its terms of reference. I don't know if Paul Wilson wants to add to that.
Paul, did you want to add?
Yeah, just very briefly, Chair. Members did decide when we looked at the Constitution that all commercial activities that the Council wishes to embark upon would come through the policy committees, and there have been examples of that. Whilst members may not consider it totally commercial, the garden waste charging scheme is a commercial enterprise. It has generated just short of £560,000 for the council. There are other examples, but I understand exactly where Councillor Ratcliffe is coming from, and I do agree with Karen that if the members wish to revisit commercialisation in the context of investing in property, then that is something that we would have to look at the terms of reference for, because the assets the council did have, it's clearly committed to the Bakewell Road project now.
Okay. And Councillor Ratcliffe, I think you had another question.
Yes, just one very quick one. Perhaps just back to you, Paul. I feel sometimes a little bit like one of these those old HMV 78 recordings that gets stuck in the groove and keeps making the same sounds and noises. But this report again has very strong financial risk throughout. By 2024, we're expected to be making savings or having to make savings of anything up to 600k again. So maybe that reflects on my previous question, incidentally. Can you tell me, can you give me some assurance, as it were, that we are doing our very utmost to put pressure either individually or collectively to the government about the seriousness of our financial position, and importantly, to start to communicate, if you like, to our public in the expectation that there could be, and I make it no stronger than that, there could be some sort of service delivery impacts.
Okay, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, not just Derbyshire Dales, but all sectors of local government have been pressurising central government for some 2 years now. And the key to this lies in the government's decision to continue with single-year settlements on the budget. And we've been pushing hard at every opportunity through the Local Government Association, through district council networks. I know the leader of the council has also had conversations on this. And what all local government desperately needs is that stability. And the multi-year settlement, so we know what we're dealing with. We don't have this situation whereby we get to the end of a calendar year and we really don't know what our budget's going to be for expenditure in the following April. And that's exactly the situation we've had in the last few years, which we need to get away from. So multi-year settlements is what's needed, and we are continuing to push government for the necessity of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there's another interesting report here from Karen. I tend to look at the principles of how we set our medium financial plan. It's pretty explanatory, so I'm just going to ask 3 minor questions. The first one for Karen is that for years now we've set a 5-year model. Was this a SITFA recommendation, or was it the council's own experience? Because I know that in small businesses with a capital investment, it's a minimum of 6 years. And I just wonder why the 5 years came about. Also, the second point is the 10% working balance you refer to. What does that actually equate to in terms of timescale of business continuation and the ability to provide frontline services? And the third minor question is that you indicate in the report that the costs of the leisure services will be in a reduction in later years, and yet I can't quite find any real detail on that. So if you could expand on that, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Okay, Karen, there's 3 points there.
Right. So the first question was about the medium-term financial plan. Councillor Flitter's right in his assumption that that was a SITFA recommendation. And that's what most authorities did. The Financial Management Code that I reported to the Governance and Resources Committee last week sets out SITFA's latest views on this, and they're now suggesting that we should look longer term, perhaps up to 10 years. They're not setting that out as a requirement. They're saying you need to look at your own authority's circumstances, but that you should consider a medium-term financial plan over a slightly longer period. My problem is that given the funding situation, even doing it for 5 years is, you know, crystal ball gazing. Doing it for 10 would be even worse. But it would bring in things like replacing our refuse vehicles that we will do every 8 years. At the moment, the cut-off falls before that. So it is something I had been thinking about. The second question about the working balance, that works out at about £1 million, the 10%. And I worked out, I think it was in the budget report, that covers about 10 months in terms of time. And the final question about the leisure services. When members approved the contract with Freedom Leisure, the bid that Freedom Leisure put in wasn't a flat line over the 10 years. It started with the council having to pay Freedom quite a lot, and that then reduced over time. And I think as we get to the end of the contract, I think the last 2 years, Freedom actually pay us. So it's a stepped arrangement. I can probably dig out the report and send you a copy of that if you want, Councillor Flitter.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble.
I've only got one quick question, and that's when overall, I sort of entirely trust that we seem to have our finances in very capable hands. Someone I think will always let us know if we're in trouble and what we need to do about it. So my quick question is just about the commercial board. Paul Wilson said.
So we've discussed that, haven't we? Because.
Well, can I ask a question about it?
If you, okay.
Well, it was brought up that said that anything to do with commercialism will come through the policy committees. I can immediately see, obviously, why any officer inputs would be able to come through the policy committees. How do you envisage that anything that, say, wanted to stem from members would come through the policy committees?
Paul, can I go to Paul, please, on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, certainly members are able to offer suggestions to the corporate leadership team on any areas of potential commercialisation that you think are worthy of exploring further. We certainly invite those suggestions from our own employees, so members are no different to that. So if there is something which comes forward, this corporate leadership team would normally look to evaluate a business case, and then if having considered that business case, it is considered something that the council would need to consider for by way of a policy decision, then that's what it would come through the policy committee for that debate and consideration at that time.
Okay, right, thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I very much support recommendations in this report, and I particularly support the recommendation that the implication that we don't seek to make revenue savings over the next 12 months. I look forward to that being reflected in next year's council tax settlement. I do hope, though, that this won't stop officers and members from looking at continuing to look at ways of becoming more efficient, and in particular at sharing some of our specialist service with other neighbouring local authorities. I think that there are a number of areas, specialist areas, where all local authorities are lacking, and that there's a lot to be gained from pooling and looking at bringing in specialist services. I have to say I've been very impressed with the way that our neighbours in High Peak and Staffordshire Moorlands work together in sharing resources. I'm not suggesting that we should go as far as they're doing and having a single office resource, but I do think there are ways in which we could look at the operation of our other authorities to continuing to achieve the same outcomes, but with a better use of resources across Derbyshire. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to respond to Councillor Ratcliffe first of all on the commercial board issue, but I'd just quickly pick up on what Councillor O'Brien's come out. This is all about Vision Derbyshire, Councillor O'Brien. This is what's happening at present. That's the hard work that's been on go now for 2 years, with all the leaders signing up to it in Derbyshire, and we aim to work more collaboratively. A commercial board, Mike, if you remember, I said to Paul, I'll give it a run for a year. Let's see if there's any worth at the end of it. Unfortunately, there wasn't. And what we found coming through could easily be dealt with by officers. And that's the reason why the commercial board was disbanded. That's not to say we can't revisit it. And if you remember, the Chief Exec has recently alluded in some of his reports to a commercialisation aspect. And unfortunately, if you remember last year, he had to withdraw his paper, and Councillor Fitter requested that one of those directors have a commercial board CV. So, you know, it's on the edge, but I would issue a health warning. There are some local authorities out there now who are in very grave danger because of their commercialisation pursuits, and you've only got to go just down the road to Amber Valley and look at Luton and Beds and how they're suffering. So it's a pity that we're having to rely more on commercialisation, and I do assure you, as the Chief Executive said, I have pushed and pushed and pushed as leader on every meeting I've been at, spoke personally with Robert Jenrick, and pushed very strongly that we need a fair funding review. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Waitman.
Yes, Chair. All I've got to say is for members to remember to turn off the microphone, because the bad language at the beginning of this was disgusting.
Oh, right, I beg your pardon. For anyone listening, I missed that. Councillor Morley, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm wanting to support what Councillor Purdy said. I was chairman of the commercial board for a year. We tried very hard, but for a number of reasons, most of which he's talked about, so we can't go over them again. It wasn't a runner. And I think until the situation changes and money becomes a bit more free, then I totally agree that it just becomes a talking shop. Again, bringing our members in, our officers into meetings that they can't take time off in lieu for, and doing no good. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. So I've got no one else on my list. Please, members, we can now go to the vote. It's been moved and seconded. So I come to ask for James. I can't see him, but James, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter,
4.
Councillor Froggatt,
4.
Councillor Finesse,
4.
Councillor Gamble,
4.
Councillor Hill,
4.
Councillor Hobson,
4.
Councillor Hughes,
4.
Councillor Lees,
4.
Councillor Tony Morley,
4.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Apologies, I had to leave the meeting for a couple of minutes. I can't vote, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien,
4.
Councillor Purdy,
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe,
4.
Councillor Rose,
Councillor Rose? I can't see him.
We'll come back for him, Chair.
We'll come back, yeah.
Councillor Salt,
4.
Councillor Shirley,
4.
Councillor Slack,
4.
Councillor Statham,
4.
Councillor Sutton,
4.
Councillor Swindell.
4.
Sorry, Councillor Sutton, did I call you there? Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne
4.
and Councillor Wakeman.
4.
And Councillor Rose?
4.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's passed. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, the capital strategy. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. I hope that this report is self-explanatory and I have nothing to update, so happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Shirley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to move this report. It is, as Karen said, self-explanatory and lays out fairly simply, I think, in layman terms, as to how the capital budget will be managed, replenished, and spent throughout the course of the next year. So I move this motion.
Councillor Hill.
Yeah, more than happy to second. Nothing to add. Thank you.
Councillor Wakeman.
I was only going to second it, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make the same similar point to that which I've made before when we looked at our capital programme, and that is to suggest that we do continue to reflect on the way we fund our programme. The report, and in fact all our reports, are very clear that we're effectively running out of money to fund our capital programme. And yet we are not taking the opportunity to look at our investment project to see whether they would be better funded through borrowing. We were urged by the peer review colleagues to look at more innovative ways of using our resources, and we are doing that, but I suggest we're perhaps not being quite as innovative, looking at the mechanism for funding our resources. To take a case in point, if we're looking at the Bakewell Road project, which is a commercial venture by the council, which is producing a more than adequate return for our investment, it seems to me strange that as an organisation we're not taking advantage of borrowing to fund that investment, given that it produces a return, and using our own capital resources as we are for projects such as Ashbourne, where there isn't a capital return. And I would just suggest that we continue to bear that in mind and don't reach the point where the report makes clear we're going to within a relatively short period of time, where we will have no choice but to borrow if we want to fund anything capital in the future. I think now is the time to say which projects should we be funding through borrowing and which projects should we be funding through our own capital resources. That's a suggestion I think I would ask that we all bear in mind as we look to the future programme. And of course, one of the projects on there is a commercial PV array, which to me would be a very suitable candidate for using our borrowing ability rather than using our very limited capital resources. So perhaps when we do consider that project in the future, our officers can bear that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at, I'm just wondering what the reliance is within the report on the 106 contributions from developers. My fear is that sometimes this is a get out clause for developers, and they always look at the financial viability of schemes to get out of paying their due 106. And I was just wondering what has been the level of income over the past year, and I don't expect an answer to that tonight, but I would like to know how much we have, and I should know this through previous reports, but I can't just recollect what the income was last year from 106 agreements. And on page 46, you refer to project management and budgetary control. And if there's a variance of 10%, an excess of 10%, you report then back to the policy committee seeking extra finance. Well, there's nothing in the report that tells me that if those increases are too high, then you are in consideration of either withdrawing or modifying the contracts or the costs. And I'm just wondering, in what situation would you take that on board?
Yeah, I think the first question you might have to give a written answer, perhaps, Karen, or an email or something. The second one, I've lost you.
The first question was covered in the report to council about the programme 2 weeks ago. So of the total capital programme that members approved of £17 million, just under £4.5 million was being financed from Section 106 contributions.
All right.
The second question about cost overruns, I'm pleased to say we don't have a history of that. Whether that's because officers, are cautious when they put forward estimates for the capital programme. But I can't recall when we've brought a report to committee for an overspend of more than 10%.
Right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to dwell on Councillor O'Brien's point just a little bit about debt funding of capital programme. And it seems to me that in a commercial environment, property investment would be a prime candidate for debt funding. And indeed, if you were running, if it was a commercial operation, it would be likely that a mortgage would be raised on properties that were perhaps fully paid for, and the funds used then for investment in other opportunities that might arise. And I wondered whether that was allowable within the strategy that we're discussing at the moment, and under what circumstances it could happen. Thank you.
Karen, do you want to answer that, or?
Yeah, I can. So to pick up on the points that Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Hughes have raised, although we prepare our capital programme and show how we intend to fund each individual project, SITFA's recommendation and the recommendation of our Treasury Management Advisors is that we should be looking to finance the programme in its entirety and not get bogged down with how we finance each individual scheme. So Councillor O'Brien's well aware that my view is, why should we be borrowing when we've got effectively money in the bank? Why would you borrow and have to pay interest when you can just use your own reserves? I'm not totally against borrowing, and the capital strategy itself at the bottom of page 45 of your agenda, number 7, says that prudential borrowing will be used as the last, admittedly, but it will be used where borrowing is affordable and the general fund can afford the repayments. Moving on to Councillor Hughes's question about commercial investments. Later on the agenda for this meeting, we've got a commercial investment strategy for consideration, and that sets out quite clearly the criteria we use for that. And in the business case for that, we would look at the return on any investment and whether borrowing was affordable. Within the programme that members approved a couple of weeks ago, there were 2 schemes that related to climate change that we are planning to finance from internal borrowing, unless we get a grant or some other reserves in the meantime. So hopefully that's answered your question, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, thank you very much. So the report has been moved and seconded. Can we go to the vote?
Can I just come back, Chair?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Steve.
I didn't get my question really answered on the second part, because the point I was trying to make is, should the strategy not cover a section where there is a possibility of a contract failing to the extent where we have to withdraw or to reconstitute? I feel that we do it to a certain extent, and I take Karen's point that we have never had that situation, but it should be covered, in my opinion, in the strategy in case we ever meet that situation.
I'll make a note, Councillor Flitter, and try to make sure I address that when I come back next year.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can we go to the vote, please, James?
Thank you, Chairman. So beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burford.
For.
Councillor Sue Burford.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Rose.
Councillor Rose, you can move on.
Okay, Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley. Councillor Shirley.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman. Councillor Wakeman.
Mark Wakeman.
For. Yeah, for. It wouldn't let me enter the microphone.
Thank you.
For.
And Councillor Rose. I don't know if he's still there.
He may have left the meeting, Chairman.
Yeah, I can't see him.
Okay, all right, that's been passed unanimously by all those that voted. Okay, thank you. Item 12, Treasury Management Strategy. Karen again, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the SIPFA Code of Practice requires the Council to approve a Treasury Management Strategy before the start of each financial year. So that's why I'm bringing this to you now. The Council invests significant sums of money.
You're on, oh, you're frozen.
Sorry, Chair. Shall I start again?
Yeah, please start. Yeah.
So the SIPA Code of Practice requires the Council to approve a treasury management strategy before the beginning of each financial year. So that's why I'm bringing this to you now. The Council invests significant sums of money, so it's therefore exposed to significant financial risk, including the potential loss of invested funds and the revenue effect of changing interest rates. The Treasury Management Strategy, therefore, is essential to assist in identifying, monitoring and controlling risks. With regard to the external context, coronavirus has clearly had a significant impact on Treasury management. Interest rates have fallen significantly during the last 12 months, and on occasion we've had negative interest rates, which meant we actually had to pay an institution to place our money there, and that was a government institution. The new investment strategy is set out in section 1.4 of the report. The counterparties and limits shown in the table in paragraph 1.4.7 are those recommended by our advisors, Arling Close. They reflect the fact that the council puts liquidity and security ahead of yield. So we're more interested in protecting our money, keeping it safe, than we are in making a high rate of return. And I think that's what people would expect of a local authority. And that's all there is to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Atkin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Karen and her team, for producing this document. As always, she's very prudent with things and sets out things immaculately in her report. So I'll move the recommendation as set out in the report.
Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, I'll second it, please, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, only just to ask, and perhaps been a long time member, I should know this, but can you just give us a bit of an update on Arling Close? I know that on page 67 of the report they are cost effective, so that's probably one reason why we have them. But I can't remember, who are they? What do they actually cost, and how did we select them and when?
I think I'll have to give Councillor Flitter a written answer to most of those. We let a contract, I think it was about 2 years ago, a joint contract with other local authorities to get the best price. But I can certainly let you have a written answer on that.
That's fine, thanks.
Yeah. In terms of why we use them, I can tell you that's because they give us the advice on the credit ratings for certain organisations, how safe they are, and whether we should invest our monies there. That's the main reason we use those, because our officers don't have that up-to-date knowledge of the markets.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's been moved and seconded. Can we take it to the vote? We'll have to go recorded again, please, with James.
Thank you, Chair. So beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Campbell.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Rose.
I think he's left now.
Okay. Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
Or.
And Councillor Wakeman.
Or.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 13, the Corporate Investment Strategy and Commercial Investment Strategy. Karen, please.
Thanks again, Chair. It's good practice to review these strategies once a year. Having said that, I have made very few changes this year. The only other thing I'd like to say is members might recall that we used the commercial investment strategy as part of the due diligence when we looked at the Bakewell Road scheme, and we found it worked well at that time. Thank you.
Councillor Tony Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Well, here we see Karen at her very best. Prudent to the point of parsimony. Well done, Karen. And I just need to take colleagues, if they're interested, to the RAG rating, the risk assessment on pages 104 and the SWOT analysis on page 105. Smashing piece of work. Well done, and I have no hesitation in moving it, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm more than happy to second this report. As always, there's detail and transparency and a lot of hard work. Karen, thank you very much indeed. Goodness knows what your dreams are made of, but I would imagine it's a lot of figures. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a very simple comment or point and question about Appendix 1 in this report about the assessment criteria for investment projects. I know particularly in the table 10, there's a lot mentioned there about the negative impact on the council. It just occurred to me that it might be timely, perhaps next time, if not this time, to start to think about investment criteria for those projects that produce a very positive outcome for this and towards this council's policy on climate change, given the growing presence of it within our council environment.
Okay, who have I got next? I've got Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a wonderful report. It's really easy to read and there's lots of interesting information in it. So thank you very much. One of the things that intrigues me about it is the retail portfolio and the which gives us, I think, a total exposure of, well, a total asset base of 2.3, nearly 2.4 million in the coming year. And we're getting an income of 164,000 off that, as I understand it, which seems to be pretty good. So my question really is, my first question is, what are the what lease lengths are associated with this income, and therefore what future, what confidence we have going forward that we can maintain this income? That's my first question. Perhaps can I come back when Karen has answered that question?
Okay.
Second question.
We would look at that as we look at each individual business case. So members might remember, I think that was one of the considerations in the report about Bakewell Road. I can't remember if the income streams there were for 20 years alongside the lease, but it would be considered on a case-by-case basis.
But in terms of the leases as they stand at the moment, what would they be? So how many more years would there be to run before they would need to be renegotiated?
We have lots of different leases, I understand. So some of them might be for 20 years, others are 99 years, some are even longer than that. So if there's any particular leases you're interested, if you drop me an email, I can let you know. Okay,
well, it was the first one really, with the asset value of 1.3 million, 1.4 million. That one. My second question is about the investment strategy, really, and that is, I noticed that when I was reading it, I got the impression that it was entirely focused on property, and it's quite difficult to suggests that it could be that thought of investing in other assets have been can be considered within this strategy. It's just the language that is used and the which seems to be mainly associated with property. Am I right to draw that conclusion, or is there the possibility of investment in other sorts of business? For example, I think Councillor Purdy was interested and took a digester system to the commercial board a year or two ago. Would that still be possible in with this investment strategy? Thank you.
Well, in terms of an anaerobic digestion, if that was to take the place of the Vital Earth facility and effectively be in support of a council service rather than for commercial gain, then that could be considered under the corporate investment strategy. But if it was, if we were looking at commercial ventures, this does focus a lot on property, because at the time we first developed it, that was where most authorities were taking their commercial investments. And that's something I'll bear in mind next time, whether we need to expand it.
Okay, Councillor Flitter, I've got now.
Yeah, I also look at criteria, and criteria number 4, when we talk about the balancing of risk, I feel that this is open to interpretation, but it is actually covered in the investment strategy to some degree. So I'm not too upset about that. But I am surprised what sticks out to me when we look at the category of borrowers. Local community groups are at the same level of finance, £500,000, as parish and town councils. And I'm just wondering about that sum and the surety and the ability to repay these loans. Is there a reason for bringing those community groups to the same level as another tier of local government?
One of the things we have to do in this strategy is to kind of set ourselves limits for certain types of investment. So I'm not saying that we're necessarily expecting anything to come forward, but what this does is it means if something does come forward within the financial year, we've given ourselves capacity to be able to deal with it. If anything did come forward, again, we would look at each case on its merits, and we certainly would look at ability to repay any loans and so on as part of the mechanism, part of the business case for approving the loan.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Karen. It's been moved and seconded. Can we go to the vote on item 13, please, James?
Thank you, Chair. Beginning with Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 14, changes in political ballots and political group membership. Noted. This is for noting. James, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just changing my role slightly from being counter to presenting a report. So this report is submitted to reflect the changes in the council's political balance, which have occurred since the previous meeting of the council. There are two recommendations before members. I'm not going to go through the report in any detail, but members will be familiar with the changes that have occurred in political balance arising from the formation of a new group, the Conservative and Councillors Richard Bright and Graham Elliott's group. And there have been changes in the membership of the Labour group following the sad death of Councillor Mrs Pawley and the resignation of Councillor Eliza McDonough. So there are recommendations just to note the operation of the four groups and the detail of their designated leaders. And there's a consequential recommendation in terms of the changes recommended to special responsibility allowances in respect of the leader of the council, the main minority group leader, and the second minority group allowance, and also the allowance for the deputy leader of the council. Chair, I don't believe there's any need for me to go into any more detail than that, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Purding.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's said it says for noting, Chair, and so I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Hobson.
I'm happy to second the motion. We have got this, we're quite close to the annual meeting, so we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Councillor Swindell.
I lowered my hand, Chair, it's fine.
Beg your pardon. Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Chair, whether the leaders had to declare an interest with being finance involved.
I don't think so in this one when we're discussing our own.
Chair, I believe the group leaders declared an interest when this was last considered in November, so I would recommend they do so.
Oh, right, okay, I beg your pardon. So if the group leaders declare an interest.
Well, I declare that interest then, Chair.
Okay, and we'll take that as standing with the other group
Likewise,
leaders.
Chair, obviously.
Thank you. Yeah,
with the
of course.
others. Thank
Yeah.
you. And Councillor Gamble.
Hi, can I just ask a question? Obviously, there's been a change of personnel, and normally this prompts a review of the committees. So can the officer please tell me, at present, a committee structure as it stands now, is it politically proportionate?
Thanks, Councillor Gamble. The seat entitlement that's in operation for committees at the moment is the one that Council agreed at the annual meeting in July last year. We've not yet agreed a seat entitlement to reflect the various changes that have occurred since then. So in drafting the report, I took the view that given that there will be by-elections held on the 6th of May, that it wasn't appropriate at this point to bring forward suggested changes to seat entitlement, which may change again in May. So that was the reason for doing that. But just to confirm, the seat entitlement is that which Council agreed back in July 2020.
Okay,
quickly. So can I have the question I actually asked answered? The question I actually asked is, the current committee structure as it stands, is it politically proportionate?
The entitlement that Council agreed back in July would have been agreed on the basis of the proportionality at that time. Does it reflect the current makeup of the council? No, it does not, and it has not done so for almost every week that's passed since the time that Council agreed that proportionality in July. The political balance changed on the 5th of August. But we've tried to revisit the seat entitlement issue previously, and we couldn't get the necessary agreement to reflect the balance at that stage because of the way that the numbers worked. So at present, no, the proportionality of the council is not reflected on the membership of the council's committees.
Okay. Councillor Bull, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Due to the situation that Councillors Purdy and Hobson may have to declare an interest, I'm prepared to move the motion if that helps with this, the recommendations upon this.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So Councillor Shirley, would you second the motion? So we've got it.
Yes, very happy to second the motion.
Thank you. Well, it's been moved and seconded. Can we go to the vote, or should we go to the vote, James, or can we have a show of hands?
No, I think you will need to vote on this, Chair.
Okay, can we go to the vote, please?
Okay, bear with me 1 second. I'll move from one page to another. So beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
And Councillor Archer.
For.
And Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burford.
For.
Councillor Sue Burford.
For.
Councillor Buttles declared an interest, so Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter has declared an interest, so Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson's declared an interest, so Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Michelle?
Beg your pardon, for.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy and Councillor Ratcliffe have declared an interest, so Councillor Rose. He's not here. Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's carried, Chair. Okay, thank you very much. Can I suggest we take an 8-minute break and come back at 7:55? I think this would now be an appropriate time just to stretch our legs, please. 5 to 8, please return, please. Thank you. Right, Jim, can you hear me? If we could go back live when you're ready. Okay, we're live now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that. So we're now at item 15, delegation of authority, temporary appointments to parish council. James, please, again.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I'm bringing a report similar to the one I brought to you at your extraordinary meeting in February in respect of seeking authority to make temporary appointments to parish councils. It's come to our attention in the last 10 days that 2 of our parish councils have become inquorate and are unable to act as a result. So the purpose of this report is to seek authority to be delegated to myself in order to make temporary appointments to appoint parish councillors to serve on Birchover Parish Council and Mappleton Parish Council. I have been in contact with the clerks of both parish councils, and there are individuals who are willing to stand. So I'm hopeful that subject to you granting authority for this, we can make the appointments fairly quickly and enable those parishes to become effective once more. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Councillor Finesse.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a pity that these 2 parish councils have become inquorate. No doubt there are urgent decisions that need to be made that won't wait for an election. So it's imperative that we give James the authority to make temporary appointments to enable these decisions to be made. So as I said, Chair, I do support the proposal, recommendation.
Councillor Froggatt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second this. It's important that these parish councils can operate. Thank you.
Councillor Swindell.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to move it, but just to say, with the experience we've had recently with Winchester Parish Council, just like to say that the appointees there did their job wonderfully, and they're not getting involved in any of the issues surrounding the reason the parish council became defunct. And as Councillor Finesse says, they're getting those bills paid and those essential matters dealt with without getting involved in any of the political aspects of it. I was going to offer my services to James and say I would happily sit on, but if he's found candidates, that's great. But also just to say, I don't know the reasons surrounding the reason it's becoming inquorate, but it is sad to see in a matter of months 3 parish councils getting into this situation, because these are the grassroots of our communities, and we hope that they will continue to operate and flourish in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Donnelly. Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I was going to propose a recommendation. I think the experience we had with Winchester, I think, has taught us a lot, really. And it's very sad to think that we are getting these situations because looking at these, some of them are the smaller parish councils which don't have abundance of councils on board. So again, yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea, and I'm very happy to support James and his delegation to support these 2 councils. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously, Birchover is in my ward, and it's one of the 4 parish councils which are in my ward, and I think it would be good to reflect on the impact that the move to remote meetings has had on parish councils. You know, that's what the issue was at Birchover, that they just couldn't do those sort of remote meetings, and I think it's worth looking at that for all of the parish councils that we've had who have been struggling during this period. And if this goes on for any longer, we need to look at how we can make sure that there is local democracy happening across the district, irrespective of what happens. I completely support this. but I think we need to look at the impact of extending the restrictions on other parish councils as well.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment that in the 20 years I've been on this council, I've seen this sort of reduction in interest to be on parish councils has been going on for a while, and it's become harder and harder for parishes to get really the interest. I mean, the average age of parish councillors must be quite high, and there doesn't seem to be the enthusiasm for people to replace them. Certainly in my ward, that's been the experience, and I think a lot of it has been down to the sort of legislation involving parish councillors with the requirements of being a parish councillor. So I think it's something certainly as Matt has said, we need to look at this and see if there is any way of making the position of being a parish councillor less onerous. Thanks.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Swindle and Matt and Councillor Chapman. There has been a move over the last 20 years where people used to be very enthusiastic to join parish council, but it has waned over the years. So it is a grassroots of our democracy, parish councils are. So they need to be preserved and supported. And I do support this, of course, but the reasons why recently probably it's accelerated a bit is to do with COVID. A lot of parish council do struggle to do virtual meetings, so that could be one of the reasons. So probably when we get away from COVID eventually, hopefully, and I pray we will, we might see an improvement. But same as you already said, the age of parish council is above retirement age, I'm afraid. So we would like to see younger people and new blood coming in to parish councils. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put a positive spin on this, if I may. The parish councils in my ward have, I'll have to say, embraced the Zoom meetings, really, because where it's been difficult for individuals to leave their homes sometimes for any length of time, maybe once a month or so, I think the attendance has been extremely good and the objectives have been met, in my view, and the relationship is different, obviously, because we're speaking on Zoom and we see a very small image of somebody's face. But I have personally used some of my local project community monies to help the website of Longford Parish Council to upgrade their website to make it more user-friendly. And I think that's helped. And I hope they concur with that as well. So I think we can look at it positively, but I do agree with the fact that it tends to be an older generation, may I say, of those who are interested. But there is a positive spin to be made of it as well. And I think perhaps we need to work at that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Chair. In my ward, it's been very successful, the Zoom meetings. We've been able to keep having our parish council meetings. Everybody's been able to commit to attending. Nobody's worried about meeting people in person. So I'll echo what Councillor Michelle Morley said. They've been very effective, and also for environmental reasons as well. People aren't travelling out at night time and using the cars. Thank you.
Councillor Atkin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I wondered if James could elaborate on whether or not virtual meetings will be allowed in May or after May, because I do know it might need a change of law statute. I just wondered if he's got any update on the provisions for having meetings after May.
James.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. So the position at the moment is that the regulations permitting us to have virtual meetings like this end on the 7th of May. various attempts have been made to lobby the Secretary of State to extend the regulations which were made under the Coronavirus Act. The government's position is that they can't do that. However, they are looking at things that they can do to rectify the situation. However, the Association of Democratic Services Officers and Lawyers in Local Government have lodged a claim in the High Court seeking a declaratory judgment to permit virtual meetings or hybrid meetings to continue beyond the 7th of May. And they've sought also for an application to expedite that before the deadline of the 7th of May. So hopefully the High Court will get around to doing that. I don't anticipate government will be extending the regulations at that point. But if the situation doesn't change, we will need to consider the arrangements that we'll need to make for decision making at this authority after the 7th of May, not only in the context of our own constitutional arrangements, but in the context of what the COVID restrictions permit. So rather than going on at length at this point, I'll be bringing a paper to the council meeting in April, unless there's been a change of position from government at that point, which enables us to continue to meet one way or another. But there will need to be some action on this.
Okay.
Thank you very much for clarifying that, James.
Councillor Purdy, please.
Chair, I just want to very quickly add that myself and many other leaders in the country for this past 3 or 4 months have been pressing Robert Jenrick very strongly on this. Each time he's come back and said there's not sufficient time in Parliament for primary legislation. So we've said, what about amended legislation? So we've put the pressure on, Chair, and we just hope at the nth hour they come up with the answer, because otherwise it leaves all authorities in a very, very difficult position.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. The motion, please, can we go to the vote, please, James?
Chair, bear with me 1 second. Okay, beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 16, Local Government Boundary Commission for England's recommendation for new electoral arrangements and ward boundaries. We've discussed this before, ladies and gentlemen, but I'll just pass you over to James.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this report is brought to you for information in respect of the draft recommendations that have come from the Local Government Boundary Commission for England's review of the Derbyshire Dales. You'll recall that the Boundary Commission published a decision in August last year that the District Council would reduce the current 39 councillors to 34 from May 2023. And then later in August, they commenced consultation seeking views in respect to the warding arrangements for the district on the basis of that council size of 34 members. The consultation ended on the 2nd of November, and a number of members and political groups and political parties from the district made submissions to the Boundary Commission in respect of how they considered the ward boundaries should be arranged going forward. On the 2nd of February, the Commission published its draft recommendations for consultation. That consultation is due to end on the 12th of April After that point, the Boundary Commission will review all of the submissions made, and then they'll formally publish their final recommendations on the 29th of June, which will then go to Parliament for endorsement at that stage. This report itself is a fairly brief report, Chair. It just sets out what the essence of the draft recommendations are from the Boundary Commission. And they've recommended that from 2023, there will be 4 3-councillor wards, 5 2-councillor wards, and 12 1-councillor wards. And in doing that, the Commission considered that its recommendations would provide good electoral equality, whilst reflecting the community identities and interests of electors and residents in the district. The recommendation before you is just to note the recommendations at this point, and it is for members to debate the merits of the recommendations that the Boundary Commission have proposed. And of course, I would just reiterate that deadline of the 12th of April to members who might wish to make responses to the Boundary Commission. And of course, officers of the council are here to provide advice where we can, or information where we can, in respect of elected numbers or any other issues that might support the submissions that members or political groups would wish to make. So I think on that basis, Chair, I'll open to questions and I'll endeavour to answer them.
Okay, Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as James says, it's a report for noting, but I want to comment on the fact that when I first met the Boundary Commission officers back in 2019, I couldn't help feeling when I came away from that meeting that it was pretty much a done deal. We had to reduce, and I think if we hadn't have reduced, we've been forced to reduce. I can only emphasise what James has said. Members ought to get involved with this direct with the Boundary Commission. If you've not already done so, I've sent 2 objections into the recommendations for Masson Ward, which the parish councils of Masson Ward totally object to. So the only thing we can do, ladies and gentlemen, is put your feelings and views into direct to the Boundary Commission. So I'll move it, Chair.
Councillor Hobson.
Chair, I'm happy to second. I'd like to echo what Councillor Purdy said. I think it's down to members. If you have got something to say, or your parish councils or your residents, ask them to reply to the consultation. Thank you.
Councillor Gamble.
Hi, I've got a question really that emanates from when the first submission that went in from this authority. I actually phoned Paul Wilson and spoke to him and said, why were we as an authority not taking any part in what is a very important decision, I would have thought, for this authority, and making absolutely no recommendations for ourselves? The answer I got at that point was, okay, we're not doing it now, but when we get the boundary report back, the authority will make a response. Do I take it then that we are not making a response now, and that we are going to, as an authority, and that officers are going to be very happy to just accept a position, like, for example, the Bakewell ward, a ward which is going to have very, very little development, which is a ward that's subject to possible even further encroachment on holiday lets, which could take the electoral variance down even more, that has a current electoral variance very near 10%, the very percentage that actually sparks a review. That seems strange to be sitting back as an organisation and just accepting that.
James.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gamble. The issue of a boundary review is essentially a political question, and the report reflects the fact that we've looked at the implications of the Commission's recommendations from a service delivery perspective, and we've taken the view that it doesn't raise any particular issues or concerns at this point. So what I've also been doing is communicating with political group leaders to try and ascertain as to whether there is any collective view amongst members as to the overall proposals, or if there are specific issues that members wish to raise. And I've not had any response from individual members or from the groups to indicate that there is a collective view or to hint at a collective view. And given that it's a politically sensitive subject, the boundary review, there are implications around the impact of this for political parties and independently political people within the district, we took the view that it wasn't appropriate at this point to be making a recommendation on it. We actually have put this report forward for information, but it is open to members to make a view. And if there is a collective view from the council that a submission should be made and what that submission should look like, and of course the council would make a submission, but there wasn't anything in it that caused, from a service delivery perspective, which is the perspective that we reviewed, and that's my experience of these reviews in other authorities that I've worked at. There wasn't anything there to warrant a direct recommendation beyond recommending council to note it at this point. But of course, if members take a different view and there is a collective position that the council wishes to make, then it is over to you. You know, that's the purpose of this item coming to the meeting, is you can make a decision on it. You can put forward a proposal that could be voted on, which could be the submission of the council to the Boundary Commission.
Councillor Martin Burford, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I understand what James has just said, and that probably removes one of my questions and points I was going to make. I think some of the Boundary Commission's recommendations are very straightforward and logical, but some, I'm afraid, are totally illogical. And also, it's confusing as well, because there's quite a lot of encroachment of some wards into parts of adjacent parishes, despite what I understand to be the Boundary Commission's apparent view that parishes should not be split. But in urban wards, this makes for some wards becoming far bigger than intended. And also, there's a question of future development. There's a sort of urban versus rural split here, because obviously the main development in the local plan and those houses being built already are concentrated around Ashbourne, Matlock and Wirksworth. But the figures of predicted numbers seem to be rather inconsistent. One example that I can pick out, which is quite a startling one really, is the Corder Quarry development in Matlock, which is half in Matlock and half in villages at Oaker and Snitterton. Now, the total development is 475 dwellings, and probably at least 200 are going to be in Oaker and Snitterton. So it's obviously logical that because the only access is via Matlock, for the whole of the development to be within Matlock. But the predicted numbers of new electors that were given to the Boundary Commission at the start of this exercise was just two new electors, when there could be 200 houses built within the next 10 years. Some of those obviously by 2026, which is the cut-off date. So I would like, the question is, I'd like officers to revisit the statistics and their submissions to the Boundary Commission, just as a quick exercise, a desk exercise, just to see where there maybe at this stage, several years after they gave their, and I don't think those officers are any longer with us as members of staff, the figures that they submitted to the Boundaries Commission at that time, whether they are wildly out of sync with what is glaringly obvious to most of us on the ground in our communities, and then perhaps relieving this or putting right this discrepancy and resubmitting some more realistic figures. Is that possible?
I'll let you answer the question, but I think isn't that why the Boundary Commission are accepting all submissions from individual members and individual residents as well? But James.
Yes, Chair. I think that the short answer to Councillor Burford is yes, we can revisit that. I think the numbers were submitted last year, but I wasn't involved in that process. It was before I arrived here, so I'm happy to take that away, and we'll revisit that.
I've got Councillor Slack next.
Thank you, Chair. This review should be about democracy and equality in numbers. I know James says it could be political, but it's got to be about equality in numbers. And some of this, what they've come up with, is totally not about equality or numbers. An instance in my ward at Wirksworth, Bakewell has 3 councillors, Wirksworth has 3 councillors, but there's nearly 1,000 votes difference between Bakewell and Wirksworth. Bakewell have nearly 1,000 votes less. That's not about equality and democracy, not at all. And a variation, and plus that, Wirksworth has got nearly 800 dwellings to come into the equation, which should even make it even worse. So it'll take it well over 10% to 12% when all the developments put in. I think a lot of people have already sent into the Boundary Commission. Would James like the copies of those what have already sent into the Boundary Commission coming to him as well? Because I think you were advised to send it directly to the Boundary Commission, but would you like the copy of them as well, James? So I think the council.
Let's ask James. Let's ask James.
Yeah.
James.
Yeah, members, if you wish to send your submissions directly to me as well, I'm more than happy to look at them. And if I can see some collective position emerging, I'm more than happy to report that back to members.
Thank you, James. Can I just come back, Chair?
Quickly.
Same as Martin just said. Works were All Saints are very similar to Worksworth. That's oversubscribed enormously, and their development at Corder Quarry's got to go on top again. So that's another one. Sashford South's another one where major development's taking place.
Okay.
I don't think these people have taken all this into the equation whatsoever. So I think if all the council group leaders could get together and discuss this before it's too late, because we've only got till April the 12th to get this in order. So if we can all group together and come to a collective point where we can base it not on political, but on equality and democracy. That's what we've got to base it on, numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I could go on.
I've got Councillor Swindell now, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say from the outset, I read this report and I saw it as noting a general response to these proposals. Not, I think where we're going to get very sort of bogged down tonight if we all start becoming parochial and start talking about individual wards, and I don't think we should be doing that. And in response to Councillor Gamble's comments, there's never going to be an agreed response from this authority. You will not get political parties to agree because you've got individual councillors and individual political parties who are looking out for their own fortunes, particularly anybody who's looking at standing beyond, the next election. So we're not going to agree that. But I have to make this comment though, Chair, that the whole thing, in my opinion, the whole process is flawed, it's bonkers, and it's completely backwards. We pick out an arbitrary number, which in this case is 34, which, with all respect to the officer who did find that number, she did her best with it. We then debated 33, 32, 36, 37. Nobody gave any real credible reason for that number. Then we come up with that arbitrary number, throw it to the Boundary Commission, and then they have to divvy up the area into that number of councillors. Really, it should work the other way around. Try and divide the area up equally without splitting the community relations, and then seeing what number you end with. But the reason I put my hand up, Chair, originally was I don't know if I've discussed this issue with James, and I'm being a bit hypocritical saying about being parochial, but it is a technical issue where the South Darley boundary will split between Matlock Town and South Darley, where the Corder Quarry development will cross over. Does that not carry a service delivery issue there that needs to be raised with the Boundary Commission? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Swindell. I'm happy to respond, Chair. Yeah, we have had a conversation about this outside of the meeting, haven't we, Councillor Swindell? And I do think there is a need to make some representations around that particular area. I don't think there is a specific service delivery issue from the district council's perspective, but I recognise that the representations that not only you but Councillor Burford has also made earlier in the discussion on this. So I'm happy to pick that up again outside the meeting, and we can get those representations sent forward or help you support you to take those representations forward.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Councillor Swindell has put most of my points forward. We have got issues in my ward, in the Lathkill and Bradford ward, and they're certainly not happy with the proposals. And I'm sure that the emails have started landing on Gary's computer and yourselves as well, James. And I can assure you there's a lot more to come yet. So that's the position at the moment.
Remember, the last day is April the 12th, I think, for consultation in this round. Okay, thank you. I've got Tony Morley next.
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on the points of some colleagues, and they're not supposed to be any political issues, but as Colin Swindell says, there are. I wonder, would any of our colleague or a colleague like to volunteer to chair a cross-party working group to take some of the pressure off James?
Thank you very much. Right. Okay. So with the motion has been moved and seconded, let's go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
And Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burford.
For.
Councillor Sue Burford.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
Abstain.
Councillor Salt.
Against.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
Against.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
Abstain.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
Thank you. That's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. And as James said, any other new material and new thoughts, please send to the Boundary Commission and to copy him in, I think. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's look at number 17, the Peaks and Dales Railway, Manchester and East Midlands Rail Action Partnership. Steve, please.
Before Steve comes in, Chair, can we go to? Can we take a vote to go on beyond 8:30?
I was going to say, Chair, I propose extending the meeting by half an hour.
Okay, thank you. Does that find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Michelle Morley. All those in favour, show your hands. That's carried. Thank you. Let's go to Steve now, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. There's only a couple of small updates to make to the report that's in front of you. One of them is in relation to paragraph 3.3, which was that the announcement was made by the Department for Transport last week that they committed £137 million to upgrade the Hope Valley line for both passenger and freight capacity. So the suggested upgrade, which is mentioned in the report, has now had funding committed by the government to it for the Hope Valley line of 137 million. The only other update, Chairman, is that our partner authorities, the National Park Authority and the County Council, whose views are summarised in the report, have both told us today that we can publish their views on the website if members require it. Jim is flashing them up in front of you there, Chairman, but their letters which they wrote to MEMRAP are available to put on the website after the meeting, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Froggatt.
I'm on mute. This item it's just to note the views of Derbyshire County Council and the Peak District National Park Authority on this issue. And I've got to say, it's never been known before, but I fully agree with both of them. I think there's too much at stake as things stand with this. The cost has got to be astronomical. You know, you've got 3 bridges to build at Roseley. You've got to get over the hurdle of the Lord Edward Manor's not wanting them on Haddon land, so that's the tunnel out of the equation. And the reinstatement of the line in Bakel Station. And to me, it's just not a goer. You know, I think it's dead in the water. But I'm happy to move this report, just to note these views. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wakeman.
Yes, I'm against this, Chair, completely, 100%. It'll affect a lot of properties in the area. And obviously the tourists that do use the trail at the moment, we shall lose them.
So are you seconding the noting?
Just noting, Chair.
Yeah, okay, so you've seconded it. Okay, so we've got lots of people to talk now. Can we take the letters down, please, so I can see everyone? I've got Councillor Sue Burfoot, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm a bit confused about what we're being asked to do tonight on this report.
It's as per on page, whichever page it is.
Yeah, page 154.
Okay. Yeah, you carry on.
Yeah, we're being asked to consider the implications of these proposals, but I can't see anywhere where we actually are being asked to consider the implications. I mean, there are implications. At the same time, the recommendation is that we just note the views of Derbyshire County Council. So I know other people have said what they want to say, so I'll say what I want to say here, I think, if that's okay. And that I think we should go further than what this recommendation is saying, and I think we should endorse the views of Derbyshire County Council and the National Park. There aren't many occasions when I fully endorse what Derbyshire County Council are saying, but absolutely in this case, in opposing these plans, I think if we do go as far as endorsing the views of the county and the national park, then we need to emphasise the importance of the Munsell Trail and the completion of the White Peak Loop. And as the report says, these proposals, and I am quoting, if they were to proceed, the huge benefits from previous investment by the district council would be eradicated. I think that's quite enough for us to actually speak out at this time and not be neutral.
Okay, Councillor Martin Burfoot, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I completely agree with what Sue has just said, and also Councillor Froggatt earlier. This is a non-starter. It's an ill-thought-out proposal. It's a pipe dream, really, of rail enthusiasts who think they can produce or convert a trail winding through beautiful countryside based on Victorian engineering and design, and somehow supplant it on top of it a sort of modern railway, which is up to 21st century standards. I mean, I probably know this trail, or the route of the railway that's proposed better than any other member on this council, because I was closely involved in converting what was a very derelict route to the present Peddle Peak District Munsell Trail, which it was a superb facility for tourism, for exercise, for cyclists and walkers, and also, of course, contributes to nature conservation, biodiversity, and public health and fitness as well. So I think it's just a non-starter. I mean, it will cost multi-billions I suspect, to convert, and it won't produce anything other than a tourist railway, because you can't probably operate trains faster than 30 miles an hour through any of the tunnels. That's a single track as well. If it was a double track, I hate to think what might happen. The state of the tunnels is dubious at the best of times, and I think the National Park Authority has to spend a lot of money repairing the tunnels. There's the Munsell Viaduct, which is only just about fit, I think, for pedestrian traffic, certainly not heavy trains, certainly not goods vehicles, but the goods trains particularly, and the weight that they carry, without some fairly major refurbishment. In fact, they probably need to be rebuilt, which would obviously ruin the historic landscape in that area and the view from Munsell Head. So I just don't think it should be supported at all. I don't see how we can just note the views of Derbyshire County Council and the Peak District National Park Authority. I think we should certainly endorse those views very strongly, and come up with our own view similar to theirs. Well, similar to theirs, but I would prefer it to be similar to theirs, but obviously based on our own research and views as officers and as members.
I think I get your
to do that.
Well, I think I get your drift. What we're asked to do tonight is note for the officers, as it says on page 154, the views of the county council and the national park. And then if and when we get to our views, I think we should have a thorough examination of it and not do it on the hoof just now. Although we fully appreciate everybody's opinions. Can I just go around? I've got a lot. It's pretty clear that it says the views of Derbyshire County Council, the Peak District National Park, are noted on page 154, and it's been moved and seconded. Can I move on now to Councillor Gamble, please?
Hi. I'd like to just endorse all the views that's been put forward, and really ask the question. Sue Burfoot's almost opening statement is why as a group who've dreamt up an idea of a railway sort of actually ended up as a council item, which is an incomplete submission. I mean, the actual central theme of this whole thing is the Monsall Trail. And if I could claim to maybe second place to Martin Burfoot in that I walked the Monsall Trail many, many times. I know it very, very well. And I would hate to see something like that, the iconic viaduct, get destroyed. And it is... I'm one of the wards that are mentioned here, and actually I'm not moaning, but really I would have liked maybe the courtesy of an officer have been one of the wards that have come to me and said, what do you think? Does this need to come through the council? Because at the minute, I don't see really what we can consider. We've got an incomplete submission, which misses out the central point. All we've really got is a document that says there's some railway enthusiasm would like a new railway. And I don't really see why that warrants bringing to council, actually, even. But if we are, then I would agree with the views that we should strongly support the views of the Peak District Park Authority and the Derbyshire County Council.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what I think the majority of others have said, that I find it strange that we're being asked to, as the major local authority through which this proposal would pass, we're simply being asked to note the views of others. Now, I think we should take responsibility ourselves as the district council and express our own view, not merely note the views of two other authorities. I found that very strange. I'm a bit disappointed that the report doesn't express a view either. I mean, I'm neutral on this because I think there's a lot of missing information, but I do have a problem with the recommendation that simply to note the views of two other authorities. I think it's rather a waste of our time doing it. It's a waste of our time sitting here debating this. All we're going to do is note the views of the two councils. What I would say is that it is a rather flimsy business case, and yes, a lot of us are very attached to the Monsall Trail, for quite rightly, but the promoters have made an offer which the National Park Authority have accepted, which is for the promoters and the Park Authority to work together to see if they can re-provide the Monsall Trail in a different way. So I don't think we should write the proposal off entirely until that study has taken place, because it may seem unlikely, but it may be possible for the Peak Park and the promoters to provide an alternative to the trail which may satisfy people, including the district council.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Purdy next. Got lots of people who want to talk. Councillor Purdy.
Chair, what this is about for the benefit of members, I was approached by MEMRAP, two members, mainly Stephen Chato, in 2019. And what they're about, of course, is their wish, their aspirations to open the line up from Matlock to Manchester. And what they are doing is trying to gain support from surrounding authorities. The reason that it's been agreed to ask members to note is that we are showing alignment with the views of the County Council and the Peak Park, and therefore not wanting to fall out with them. I have my own personal views on this, and I've said that to Steve Chato. I've also said that it should not be at the expense of the Heritage Railway. There's been a big fallout with Paul Tomlinson and Steve Chato, I'm led to understand, because I think Peak Rail considered that they would be pushed out. And I've said to Steve Chato, that's not on. If you're going to get this line through, you've got to keep that heritage line running as well. So it's a pressure group, quite frankly, and you can't blame them for wanting to give it a whirl. I think they're premature coming to us unless DFT puts a rubber stamp on their paperwork. I do think they're a long way off. We've also discussed what I consider to be the insurmountable problems of the Monsell Trail and so forth. So they have some real hurdles to get over and present a solid business case that all those hurdles are smoothed out, catered for, dealt with before I think they should bring such a report to the likes of us. So this is very, very early embryonic sort of process, and I suggest we just note it, members.
Right, I've got Councillor Hughes next.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two things I'd like to do. First is ask a question, then.
So can I just say, I think Councillor Statham has left the meeting, just for the record, okay? Thank you.
Okay. First one, I'd like to ask Mr. McLaughlin what the money that they've been that is made available is for. And secondly, I would like to move an amendment to the motion to allow.
I think your answer. Can we just do the question? I think that's to Steve Capes.
Okay, sorry, Steve Capes. Oh, it was Steve Capes, wasn't it? Sorry.
Yeah.
Chairman, there is no money available at present time. The report is purely about a historic or a recent business case that the group has done, but there is no prospect of funding at the present time.
Okay, I thought it was. You mentioned funding previously. Perhaps I misheard you. In that case, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion that we endorse the views of the two parties, and as a district council.
I'll second that.
Right, okay, so an amendment, okay. So we debate, now let me get my head around this. James.
Chair, we now have a amendment that's been proposed and seconded, so we debate the amendment before voting on that.
We need to know what the full amendment is. That's why I was asking for the full set of words, but it's endorsing. So you're saying you're using the word endorse rather than note, correct, Councillor Hughes?
Indeed, yes. So we're endorsing the views of the County Council and the Peak Park.
So another way of doing it perhaps is asking the proposers and proposer and seconder whether they would, the recommendation could be to note the views of the Derbyshire County Council and Peak District National Park and endorse them. Would that be another way of doing it, James?
Yes, if the proposer and seconder accept it, Chair, then it would become the substantive motion.
So I've got a feeling that generally most of the members are in agreement with this. Do the proposer and seconder
yes,
are they
I'm
happy with that set? Can I just ask James to repeat it, or shall I? James?
Thank you, Chair. Just bear me 1 second. So I believe rather than, I'll read the recommendation. So it would be that the views of Derbyshire County Council and the Peak District National Park are endorsed and noted.
Are noted and endorsed.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with that, Chair.
And me, Chair.
And I am.
Right. Okay. So we'll carry on. We've got various other people who want to talk. Where am I? Sorry, this is getting confusing. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my my comment fits either proposal, and more strongly, I feel with the amendment. in my opinion, the Peak and Dales Railway is horrendously out of date. It doesn't resonate with today's thinking. For example, the increase in biodiversity and ecosystem on the Monsell Trail has been proven to be eminently more beneficial and greater since the railway ceased. It's a veritable haven for all kinds of wildlife, all kinds of flora and fauna. The argument that this would provide would reduce the amount of lorry traffic on the roads. Well, one of the quarries which would be most dominant on this Buxton to Matlock, on this Buxton to Bakewell line or Matlock, is Topley Pike Quarry, and probably not most members don't know that Topley Pike Quarry will lose its license to produce aggregates on the 31st of January 2025. So that takes a large chunk out of what the benefit of this railway line would be. Another thing that isn't sort of acknowledged by MEMRAP or Peaks and Dales is the fact that the Monsell Trail belongs to the Peak District National Park. It's part of its property portfolio, and it's put in a lot of money into this. I mean, for example, the Monsell Head Viaduct, the National Park currently have a capital fund of £600,000 in reserve to make the Monsell Head Viaduct safe for walkers, for cyclists, for horses, and to throw that away just isn't viable. And let's be honest, a railway line from Matlock to Buxton in modern day is not, let's be realistic, is not going to reduce traffic. People, the society today is dependent on traffic. People are going to come out because they want to bring the picnics, they want to bring the barbecues, unfortunately, but they want to bring the bikes, and it will make a very insignificant difference to that kind of customer. We've got to face the fact that the Monsell Trail as it stands is far more attractive for the usage it's put to at the moment, where people can cycle, where people can walk, can horse ride, and I'm fully supportive, not unrealistically and not unsurprisingly, with the Peak District National Parks opinion, and I endorse and will support this very strongly.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say a reason. I think I'm completely behind public transport. I'm completely behind more trains. I think more trains are fantastic. I have, they came and talked to us at Matlock Town Council, and I saw no evidence there that it was actually going to do anything about increasing the amount of public transport and rail use. I'm still not convinced that it's done anything about that. So I'm completely behind the amended motion as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Atkin.
Yes, Chair, I will move that the question now be put.
Okay, does that find a seconder?
I'll second that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hobson. Right. Okay, so the question can now be put. So it's been moved and seconded. James.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Allison.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Bright is left, so Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
Councillor Gamble. you still there?
Sorry,
Shall we move on?
my screen had frozen before.
Thank you. Councillor Hill,
4,
Councillor Hobson,
4,
Councillor Hughes,
4,
Councillor Lees,
4,
Councillor Tony Morley,
4,
Councillor Michelle Morley,
4,
Councillor O'Brien,
4,
Councillor Purdy,
4.
Councillor Slack.
4, but Chair, I did put my hand up for a question. But it doesn't
So,
matter
so
now.
the question was put, so I beg your pardon.
Yeah, so I'll leave it now.
Councillor Sutton,
4,
Councillor Swindell.
I think he's gone.
4,
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Wayne
4,
and Councillor Wakeman.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been approved. Then City of Documents, Councillor Stuart Lees,
yeah, I'd like to move them, Chair.
and seconded by Councillor Swindell. I think, yes, all those in favour, please show a hand. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're wrapped up by 10 tonight, 10 to 9. We'll see you all again on April the 22nd. Thank you very much.
Good night.
okay, bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks, Chair. Excellent meeting.